Hello, my name is Daniel Pressman. I'm arguing that the United States federal government ought to pay reparations to all African Americans. Now, obviously, in our current situation, there have been no compensation or reparations at any time for slavery and the continuing racism that preceded it for the next 100 years and still continues to a lesser extent today. What my plan details to do is offer reparations to all African Americans through $250,000 and free pre-K and free college expenses at all public universities in the United States. The money would be mostly taken from the federal budget through the defense. Not paying reparations are wrong on a number of levels. First off, slavery and institutionalized racism still reap a profound effect on African Americans' lives today. Just think that slaves made it possible for all the whites, or many of the whites, to go into more rewarding occupations to gain increased skills and to generate greater lifetime earning for themselves and their descendants. Through these indirect and passive ways, slavery produced enormous benefits beyond those usually considered, and not just through slavery, but all the preceding 100 years. There was exclusion and discrimination allowed millions of Americans and even immigrants to enter occupations with greater prospects than African Americans. And the racism and these effects generate income and wealth that continues to flow to present-day recipients, and there's no way to compensate it currently. Secondly, emancipation after emancipation, slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule from the federal government and never received it. So this idea of reparations is not something new. It's something people were entitled to, never got, and we should make up for it right now. And lastly, there are less African Americans in classrooms. These are just facts. The workforce, not to mention well-acclaimed jobs in the workforce. And at this point in society, diversity should be a staple of our country, and we have no business not trying to promote that. Obviously, these harms are bad, but all that talk doesn't mean much if my plan doesn't solve for these harms in a substantial way. Now, education is widely regarded by many influential people as the key to everything. There was a study done by the American Psychology Association on Oklahoma's universal pre-K system, which basically concluded that this program has succeeded in enhancing the school readiness of a diverse group of children. So, free pre-K for all African Americans would allow millions of children to not enter our public education system already behind their counterparts, and a gap that isn't overcome in many cases, sadly. And then the free public university education also ensures that African Americans can continue their education and that money won't be an issue, or the lack of legacies at schools won't be an issue, and just deprive these capable students from not getting a good education. The thought process is that through education, there will be more people of color in higher education classrooms, which will translate into better jobs and eventually a more diverse nation while slowly killing off the effects of racism in this country. Now, obviously, these educational adaptations help our current youth generation and upcoming generations, but what about the older generations? Now, that's where the $250,000 clause will help African Americans, all African Americans. This money gives them the opportunity to dream, to pursue things that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have been able to pursue. And even if they don't use the money in quote-unquote great way, they are entitled to use it however they want. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't get the money that they deserve. And for those that argue, is this topical? Not all African Americans in our country currently have ancestors that were slaves. The issue is that all African Americans do reap the issues of racism. There's no tag on a person saying my ancestor was a slave, and all these effects of racism affect all African Americans, not just the select few that ancestors were slaves. Lastly, by the U.S. federal government setting the precedent that slave labor isn't okay and that making up for it is the right way to progress with society, this could lead to a fantastic snowball effect on other world powers that enslaved other groups of people or even countries by giving them reparations and contributing to our journey for world peace. With all this in mind, I believe it is our nation's best interest and really duty to give African Americans these reparations as detailed in my plan. Thank you.